One.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Interviewing the Legends. I'm your host, Ray Shasho. Andy Tillison is a multi-instrumentalist, singer-songwriter, and the leader of progressive rock band The Tangent. The Tangent, hailing from Northern England, weaves cinematic and lyrical music, often addressing observations about our world. Their compositions defy traditional prog rock norms, embracing influences from various genres, including jazz, modern pop, progressive rock, and more. Notably, the band avoids the stereotypical 12-string acoustical sound associated with classical prog rock, preferring a fresh and eclectic approach and an electric approach. The band's philosophy centers around openness to contemporary bands and styles, transcending the boundaries set by the 70s prog rock icons. Their debut album, The Music That Died Alone, released in 2003, garnered attention as a supergroup. It was a supergroup project, although Tillison prefers to describe it as a good idea rather than a supergroup. Through personal changes and fluidity, the Tangent continues to create music that defies conventions and resonates with listeners. The Tangent recently announced the release of a new studio album to follow Polaris. It'll be released on May 10th. The album was produced between January and November of 2023, and the brand new release features Andy Tillison using his multiple keyboard system, but adds to the mix his first ever release performance on bass guitar and his second on stick-driven electric drums. Add electric, acoustic guitars, and an electronic wind controller, and this is a full band recording in every sense of the word. Please welcome multi-instrumentalist, singer, songwriter, composer, producer, and engineer of progressive jazz rock group The Tangent, Andy Tillison, to Interviewing the Legends. Hello, Andy.
Well, thank you very much. That was a hell of a build-up.
That was a mouthful.
That was really cool. Okay, I was getting a bit embarrassed. Thanks very much indeed. And it's I'm a multi-instrumentalist. I'm kind of like I'm a keyboards player and I'm a bass guitar owner. I own a drum kit. I own a guitar. I own a bass guitar, and I own a wind controller. But I'm a keyboards player, so I think that's a bit more like it.
But you know what? You're so very modest, because this new album is incredible, and I don't know how you do it, man. You played all the instruments on the album. I mean, some of these songs sound like classic jazz pieces back in the Miles Davis era. I mean, a couple of tracks anyway. It's incredible. It's an incredible album.
Wow. Thank you.
To follow Polaris. Now, first of all, you decided to make this album on your own because the other members were scattered all over the world playing with other bands, I guess, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, and what bands they play with? Steve Hackett Band, Soft Machine. I mean, Theo's even played with Dave Gilmour not so long back.
Wow.
Obviously people like Karnataka and Cyan and Luke's own solo stuff, and Steve plays with David Cross. And I don't play with anybody like that. Actually, I do. I actually play for Sam Fox quite a lot. The legendary 1980s pop singer, Samantha Fox. And I do quite a lot of work for her, but I don't actually play live or anything. So that's one of the things I do. But here in the studio, I glued it all together really, and wrote the songs and decided that on this occasion I'd take the whole thing through. I mean, when a band's been going 22 years like ours has, and you've made 12 albums, it doesn't do any harm to shake the tree now and then, see what falls out, and just what else we could do, and it taught me a lot of things about how I'll write future stuff for the band, because in doing this, I learned a lot about what it is I ask of the musicians every time. And I think that, you know, when I approached this as the bass player, because I had to become the bass player for this for this album, I kind of realized a lot of the things that I'd done that made it awkward. And I thought, you know, I could have made this easier for Jonas to contribute to if I'd only done this. And, you know, and I ended up experiencing the often frequent disputes between bass player and drummer.
Right.
Because I was the drummer and I saw the bassist's point of view, but I also wanted to make myself felt. And so that the two halves of me, that one was a bass player and one was a drummer, were sort of like, you know, having a bit of a dispute about how this should be done. And so I've learned an awful lot about how this works by doing it. And there's no harm in learning something new, even when you're as old as I am. So there you go.
Hey, don't say that. We're the same age.
Well, you can't be 64.
I'm 65. I'm January of 1959, and
Oh,
I'm actually
God,
a few months older than you.
Yeah, well, you're looking good on it. Yeah. I mean,
Oh, so you, man. You look good.
I work with another band called the Anchorette, who are kind of like a very young, modern, progressive metal outfit from Canada. And they refer to me as Gandalf, which is kind of nice. You know, I'm kind of like the aged sage, I suppose. Yeah, I absolutely love working with them because they've got so much energy and whoa, you know, and a fantastic group, by the way. So you should check them out if you haven't heard them.
Sure.
Yeah.
Actually, most of the guys I hung out with in high school look like you. They all were in bands. They all had long hair. I had long hair. I had hair way down to there when I was in high school. Yeah. Did you have a band in high school?
Oh yeah, I've had a band. I've had a band all my life. I can't remember not being in a band. You know, I mean, I was in bands in the 70s. You know, so that's it. It really goes back an awful long way and everything. And yeah. And of course I've had long hair. I mean, I've still got hair. I've done really well with hair.
Yes, you have.
Not quite as well with teeth, I have to say, but like hair, I've done okay. And
you've done great.
2 out of 3 ain't bad, as Meatloaf said. You know?
Yeah, I feel sorry for guys like Peter Frampton, you know, because he had beautiful hair and it's all gone.
Well, I said, I mean, mine will go one day. It's beginning to thin a little bit out here, you know. And,
no, yeah, if you have it now, it'll stay with you, I think.
That's
I have confidence.
Yeah.
I'm guessing you got a Scottish background because I've seen you wearing kilts. Is that right?
No, I don't. Well, I mean, I'm not Scottish at all, actually. No,
really?
No, I don't wear kilts. I wear skirts. You know.
Okay, so, well, it's similar, isn't it? Is that similar?
It's. I mean, you know, so it's just a case of that's just a personal life choice, a lifestyle choice. I always have done, really. So
they look like kilts.
Yeah, I mean, like tartan ones, I suppose. Yeah, but they're just. I'm wearing a skirt now, so there you go. It's
must be comfortable. Yeah,
it is. It's far more comfortable and much more practical. I mean, when people ask me why do you wear skirts, I say, well, you don't have to change your boots when you change your skirt, do you? You have to take your boots off. You just change. So
it's
quicker.
It's better in the studio.
Yeah.
I love your studio too, by the way. I just had Robert Berry on a couple of days ago, and he was showing me his studio, and he's very proud of his studio. And that's probably one of the biggest things you guys are proud of is when you build a studio and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and you just kind of sit back and look and go, wow, this is great. This is all mine.
I bet his is tidier than mine. You see, I mean,
well, he said it was dusty.
Mine's just a huge mess. Really, I mean, it's just a room. It's not a studio. It's not treated in any way. And everything that happened on the album happened in this room, except occasionally I went downstairs. There's a Hammond organ downstairs, a proper 1960s one. So
Oh,
I wasn't
wow.
going to drag that up here. So I took the computer downstairs to record the Hammond. So
Nice.
you know, and it's just a I've never really liked recording studios. I'll be honest. I used to own one. I used to own a commercial recording studio back in the 1980s, but I've never really liked visiting them because they're just you know, they're such foreboding places full of all this really, really expensive gear. I mean,
Yeah.
we have a place here in the UK that's it's called Real World. Peter Gabriel owns it, and quite a few people, you know, like to go there and record. And to me, I go in there and I think, shit, the left-hand speaker is worth more than all my kit put together, you know, and it is. And I always think to myself when I'm doing that, who's going to listen to this music on a speaker that costs that much? And the answer is nobody, except you know, Musk or Trump or somebody like that, you know. And and it's just not going to be. It doesn't have that relevance. I like to record on realistic speakers that other people will listen to this music on, rather than something that costs £15,000, you know, for one speaker. What?
Yeah. Well, your studio is cozy too. You know, I've seen tours of Abbey Road, and it just kind of looks kind of cold. You know, it's so big and empty, and you know.
I mean, I think, you know, if I was offered a weekend in Abbey Road, I'd certainly take it. I'd like to have a look around there, but
yeah.
I usually end up feeling uncomfortable and watching the clock and watching the money burn and everything.
Yeah.
So in 22 years, as we've been recording, the Tangent has only actually hired a recording studio once. Yeah.
Wow.
We recorded the drums for our album Down and Out in Paris and London in a place called Frog Recording Studios in Warrington. It was a very nice place. We recorded Paul, the drummer there, the guy who used to play for, well, he still does play for 10cc, and he played for us on that album. And we thought we'd better put him in a nice recording studio, so we did. Other than that, on 2 other occasions, we've hired a rehearsal room to record our drums. And the rest of it, every single album for 22 years has been recorded in our own facilities here.
Nice.
At my house. Luke has a similar system, except tidier at his house. Jonas has one at his house that's tidier still. And, you know, but they're all just home studios, and that's how we've made all our records all this time, you know.
It reminds me of the old days, like Hitsville, you know, and Detroit, you know.
It is, because, you know, we've I mean, I've certainly grown up with a very DIY punk ethic.
Right.
I used to be in punk rock bands back in the day, and of course, like, I learned a lot about, you know, self-releasing cassettes and recording using cassette recorders and Porter Studios. I've been through all that. And,
sure.
And plus, having been a studio owner, the fact is that, in all honesty, there's so much you can do with a computer now that, and I did hear a story, and I won't mention the name of the band, but you've heard of the band. You've definitely heard of the band. They're big, okay? And they decided that they were going to hire out Dave Gilmour's barge, yeah?
Right, on the water, yeah.
He has a recording studio, and it's got everything in it, you know. It's absolutely beautiful. And they decided they would hire that out to do the mix on their album. So they did the mix of it on this thing, and it cost them thousands of pounds to do it, yeah. And in the end, they released the album, and they'd gone back to their own bedroom and mixed it directly out of the back of a Macintosh and thought it sounded better. So you know, and the person who was responsible for that decision is somebody who is really well respected as a producer. So, you know, worldwide, wins awards. So, I mean, like, you know, that kind of mentality really appeals to me. I grew up in the time of, you know, the I think, I mean, the Sex Pistols was when I was just leaving school. So by the time I was playing music, you know, you had people like Joy Division on the scene, and you know, and that kind of group, and the Bauhauses of the world, and people were very much into sort of like, you know, recording anywhere, anytime,
Sure.
anything. And I really got into that, and I've always been into that sort of things. Yeah.
Yeah, I was a top 40 disc jockey back in the late 70s. And I grew up in the 660s like you, listening to top 40 radio, and the sound quality, very simple, but clear, perfect, in my opinion. All those 60s bands, you know, all those 45s we grew up with, the sound was incredible, you know?
Yeah, well, of course, like I mean, like I don't know which ones you were listening to. I mean, like
All of them. Yeah.
for me, it's the Tamla Motown ones were just like, whoa, how the hell did they
Fantastic.
do that? You know, I mean,
Exactly.
you're just
Yeah.
listening to Ain't No Mountain High Enough. I
Yep.
mean, go, whoa, just listen to the sound of that. It's just enormous. And
Yeah.
River Deep Mountain High, and that, you know, it just. I mean, those records are where I learned to write songs.
Yeah. Early Yardbirds, the Zombies.
Oh,
You know,
of course,
I
yeah,
was very much
Zombies.
in the British
Yeah,
scene, you know, growing
yeah,
up.
it was
Yeah.
really nice times. Yeah, Crazy World of Arthur Brown and all that sort of
Yeah.
stuff.
I've had Arthur on the show many times. He's such a great guy.
Well, he's a loony, isn't he? He's a
Yeah.
fantastic guy. I mean,
I love
I,
Arthur.
I saw him. I saw him give a speech, and he was accepting an award.
Uh-huh.
As an awards ceremony. And I think that in 64 years of seeing awards shows, it was the only speech that was actually worth listening to. I just sat there and thought, you're right, you're right, you're right about that, you're right. Yeah, I just got up.
Yeah.
Fantastic. You know, really actually appreciated what that guy had to say. So he's a total hero as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I liked Rick Wakeman's speech too at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He was very, very funny. I had Rick on the show also, and we talked about that speech.
He's a funny guy. Yeah.
He's a comedian.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the album because I loved it. I really enjoyed it.
Okay.
Hope the rest of the band members don't get jealous, but I guess they won't because it's going to have their name on it.
They won't get jealous about it at all. I mean, you know, we're just professional musicians. We all know the score, and you know, and we know how this works. So you know, like I mean, there's been things I've played on for other people, and I don't get invited back the next time. And you know, you just think, okay, well, I was right for this one, not right for this one.
Exactly.
That's the way it goes. But they would have been right for this album, of course they would. But hey, they just weren't here at the time, and I needed to make I need to make a record because you know it's my job.
Yeah.
And, so
a song that totally blew me away. It was Tea at Betty's. Okay. It sounded like a very old school jazz track, and I'm wondering what would Miles Davis, you know, and all those guys back then think of your creation of the modern day jazz song and the way you recorded it.
Are you talking about the track "Tea at Betty's"? The
Tea at Betty's, yeah, Tea at Betty's.
Okay, that's on the album as a bonus track, but a lot of people have picked up on it and said that's one of their favorites. And
it is.
Strangely enough, I was talking to another guy today who said, "Oh, I didn't really like that one."
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, so it's
a classic.
You know, well, it's an interesting thing. I mean, that piece was unlike the rest of the album, which was made on all the instruments like guitar, bass, drums, and all that kind of stuff. Tea at Betty's was performed entirely on keyboards. There are no drums, no bass, nothing. It's all keyboards, and the idea of that was sort of a bit of a joke, because Betty's, that is in the title, it's particularly for English people, I guess, is that Betty's is a very posh tea room, and it's very, very English sort of institution up here in Harrogate, which is a posh town, and you get usually quite sort of like elderly ladies and gentlemen who want to go out for a cup of tea and some scones, and every so often they're treated to a jazz trio who might sort of be just playing light jazz in the background. And I've seen one of these, and I and I was watching them and thinking they're bored to tears. So I do this joke track, which of course starts off with exactly that. You can hear people chinking cutlery
Yes.
and talking to each other, and there's this band playing nice sort of like, typical restaurant jazz background music. And I actually thought, well, okay, I'm actually going to do this for quite a long time. So there's 5 minutes of this jazz just going on. And so people who are listening to this record might go, what's going on here? It's sort of smooth lounge jazz. But as you probably know now, you've listened to the track, suddenly this band get bored and start playing something that's a bit more jazz fusion-y.
Right.
They're starting to play stuff that sounds more like Voivod or Metallica.
Yeah.
They
And
move
funky
into
too. You get some
and then
funky. Yeah.
they turn into a bit of prog in the middle of that, and then
Sure.
they go down to a bit of drum and bass and sort of groovy, sort of like garage music, and then a bit of 20th century classical, a bit of acoustic guitar, and then it all comes back in. And the audience is still taking no notice of the band, but occasionally go, "Thank you." And so it's just my little. It was a joke. It took a day, and I had a lot of fun doing it. And Inside Out said we need a bonus track, so I said, okay, fair enough, we'll have this, and they said, yeah. So
See, I thought it was very clever. I've been listening to music for a long time. I love jazz.
Oh, me
And
too.
you're
Yeah.
good at it. You're really good at jazz. It's incredible.
Well, yeah, I mean, like there are probably a few jazz musicians who kind of disagree with you about that. I mean, jazz is
I don't
very,
know.
I do imitate things quite well
Yeah,
when I want to, but I'm
it's
not.
excellent.
I don't think in jazz. I just love it.
Right.
So, but I'm a rock musician who tries to incorporate jazz. So in recent years, people have started talking about jazz fusion music.
Right.
Yeah, and that's what people talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the day, in the 1970s, I used to call it jazz rock. Yeah.
Right. Right.
And so that's really what I think I do. I think I do quite a lot of jazz rock.
Mm-hmm.
And in jazz rock, I would have put people like Colosseum 2, and I would have put, that was jazz rock to me.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
maybe Return to Forever's more like jazz fusion, where
Right.
rock and jazz that maybe fusion's more jazz than rock, and jazz rock's more rock than jazz. So I don't know how the genres work. We can argue about genres for the rest of time, can't we? But and what they mean and everything, everybody's got their own definition of prog, ranging from shit to the most amazing thing in the world. That's it's just there. I don't know.
Now they've got prog metal, where you get a lot of shredding.
Yes, prog metal. That's
Yeah.
around here.
Yeah. I love the track though, and you must have liked it too, and enjoy playing it, because it went 17 minutes and 32 seconds.
I absolutely loved it. It was great fun. It was a fun thing to do. One day it was raining, I think, and
Really.
so I did, and every so often it is nice to be able to include something like that as a bonus track, because it was never intended to be released. It was just.
I love it.
So there's here's the album I've spent nearly 2 years making, and as a bonus, here's something I did one wet Sunday afternoon. That's kind of nice in its way. So
sure. Some other tracks I love too. I know you have some Steely Dan influence, and I did hear it in The Fine Line. I heard a little bit of Steely Dan in that. Yeah. Yeah.
I think that the Fine Line is very much. I mean, I actually, I'll be straight up with you. I didn't really know all that much about Steely Dan until about 10 years ago, where a friend of mine said, "Oh, you really should listen to some of this," and so I did, and I was kind of like, oh, I hadn't realized just how amazing this music is. I've missed out here. So, and I've kind of educated myself on it since then. And it's been it's been a really interesting voyage of discovery. Taught me a lot about how to record, how to produce, how to
Sure.
write, and everything. So that's been something that has been very, very useful to me. The fine line, it's obviously, it's got those dance structures in it, the sort of the chords, the rhythms, the way it's all put together. It's got additional bits of kind of Burt Bacharach in there with sort of bits that sound like downtown. Da, 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 da. It's a fine line. It's very, it's there, it's in there. There's bits of Ain't No Mountain High Enough where I'm going fine line. Da, 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 straight out of Motown. I really enjoyed putting that song together again. And lyrically, of course, it's about current affairs. It's about everything, all the news in the world being bad and having to go to work. And whilst you're on your way to work, there's at least 3 threats of nuclear war coming from Putin. And by the way, there's a new disease, there's a new variant, this thing that's happening, and by the way, your oil's going up, the mortgage rate's going up, prices are going up, and you're going to be dead by tea time, but you've still got to go to work.
Exactly.
I mean, it's just crazy.
So that's funny.
There was an element to which quite a lot of black humor in the song. Now, Steely Dan did use black humor quite a lot. Obviously, in the modern world, quite a lot of Steely Dan stuff, usually a little bit grubby stories about things they were doing with sort of girls who were probably too young for them, But I thought that's not the kind of song I wanted to sing, but I still love their songs, You just have to kind of like go, they're a bit dodgy, aren't you, sometimes, guys? But
well, actually, Steely Dan's a lot like you in the band because you bring in a lot of different musicians, and that's all they did. They brought in tons of different musicians, great players,
Well, I kind of settled down, you see. The Tangent, it was well known for having a revolving door of musicians until 2014, and in 2014 we just settled down, and me, Jonas, Luke, and Theo have been making the records together since then. We added Steve 6 years ago. No, it's 7 years ago now, in 2017. So that is 7 years ago, isn't it? Yeah, I think it is. So, for the past 7 years, we've been totally stable. And for 3 years before that, we were just the same lineup, except without Steve. So all that sort of like musician selection and rejection, which it was never rejection. It was usually because they were too busy to play for us, or stuff like that. I mean, we've had people leave the band and join King Crimson, So,
I know.
So that's
that happens a lot in Prague. I mean, usually musicians today in Prague belong to 4 or 5 different bands. It's incredible.
Yeah, that's right. Except me, I'm just in one.
You don't need anybody. You can do it yourself.
I'm in the Anchoret as well, so that's
yeah. And you said you're working with Samantha Sang, right?
No, Samantha Fox,
Oh, Samantha Fox. Okay.
Touch me, I want to feel your body.
Yeah.
Heartbeat close to mine. That one.
Are you producing her music or?
I do. I do a lot of her live set. She tours the world.
Right.
She sings to a lot of backing tracks. Sometimes she has a band. Sometimes she sings to backing tracks. She's one of these people who will turn up in Turkmenistan, and the main broadcaster will want her to be on breakfast television and to sing it, and she'll be playing it over something I played for her. That's
okay, cool.
That's what
that's a good gig.
Yeah, it's all right. Yeah, I mean, I go on tour without having to leave the room.
Another kind of a darker track, the anachronism, kind of a Roger Waters, mentality, the way he comes across on a song, talking about politics and this and that. But I love the lyrics in this one. It's right on. Have you ever wondered how it happened, and have you ever wondered what went wrong? And is it really freedom? What with that ballot slip you've been filling in so long, and marks the sunny spot. They're promising you X marks your choice. Go red or blue. But one thing's for sure is hell. And they won't look
like you.
They won't look like you. Yeah, that's true. That's 100%. No matter who you vote for, they're not going to pay any attention to us.
They're not. Like, I mean, like in my country, we have a leader. He's called Rishi Sunak, and he does not look like me. And neither does the opposition leader, Keir Starmer. He does not look like me. In fact, he doesn't look like, none of these people look like any of us. When I think of us as a people, I think of people from all over the world. And some of them are sort of like, some of them are carrying water to their homes, and some of them are at festivals watching rock bands, and some of them are driving cars, driving trucks, working, and everything like that. And I think we're not being represented.
No.
Because,
we're not.
I mean, like, over here, we're involved in an interminably boring argument about whether trans people should be accepted, whether gay people, this is woke, that's wrong.
I know.
Just get on with it. Can't anybody understand? There's millions of types of people in the world, and
yes, there are.
We've all got to live here, and we all share the same galactic postcode. That's it. That small blue dot there that Carl Sagan took a photograph of all those years ago. That's where everything has happened. Where Genghis Khan happened, Roger Waters happened, and and Donald Trump. We all share this tiny little bit of rock spinning around in the middle of nothing. So we just need to just get on with each other better. And I think the anachronism is about how totally irrelevant, these elections, and it's an election year for everywhere just about this year, it's not exactly looking great in America. It's not looking great where we are, and it's just going to make an awful lot of people very angry with each other, and nobody's going to get what they want out of the result. Both the promises from every side are almost certainly going to be disappointing in result. And I just wish we'd got a more advanced way of doing things, because we're still using the same electoral decisions and the decision making and everything that's been going and enshrined in constitutions that are so old.
They're old. You're right.
And I mean, they're before even telecommunications started, before the Morse telegraph, before radio, before television, before computer games, before the internet, before artificial intelligence. All this stuff, how we elect leaders, started. It's a freaking anachronism. It is out of date, completely unfit for purpose in a world that we live in. And I don't care who you vote for. If you vote for something that actually gives you what you want, I'm very surprised you found it. Please tell me how to do it. It's not going to happen. I don't. It's just.
I wish the common guy, or guy or girl or whatever, has a chance to become a president. Somebody that's not a multimillionaire, somebody off the street with good ideas, but that's not rich, you know what I mean? But they never have a chance because they don't have the money to run.
Well, that's a shame. It is such a shame, is that? I mean, there is this section in the song that we're talking about, where I'm going through a list of all the crasses, and I'm saying democracy's failed us, autocracy sucks,
right? Yeah,
kleptocracy's a rip-off, and theocracy, well, that's not a good idea because it rhymes with sucks. I go through bureaucracies, technocracies, all that kind of stuff, and in the end, I guess that what I'm trying to say is that when it boil them all down, and you just end up with everybody's a kleptocracy, really. They're all ripping us off, creaming the money for themselves and their own projects and their own pet obsessions, really. And
it's really
giving us value for money.
I worked in Washington, D.C. for years since I was a kid. My dad had
Drain the swamp. Yeah, go on.
exactly. My dad had retail electronics stores since the late 50s. So I saw the evolution of electronics, you know, from reel to reel, transistor radio, the Walkman and CD and all that.
Yes.
And we were 2 blocks from the White House. I saw it all, you know.
Yeah.
There are so many damn government buildings that do nothing.
Yeah, I can
So
imagine.
you're talking about lining their pockets.
Yeah,
You know, you can get rid of 90% of those buildings and you'd be fine and saving a ton of money, you know.
I think that's very true. You know, that's big government, and
Yeah.
you know, I just think it's time that, you know, we're so good at coming up with ideas, the human race. I mean, look at the stuff we've come up with. I mean, like, you know,
Right.
I mean, you know, you and I was saying this to another guy earlier on today. I was in Italy, so it's all right. Say it to you. I mean, like, you're slightly older than me, which surprised me. That means that you probably, sometime when you were young, are old enough to have traveled on a steam engine when these were things. Yeah, steam engines were running, coming to the local railway station on a daily basis when we were young. Yeah, we've lived through steam engines. We've we've lived through the beginning of telephones and all that sort of stuff. Early TV, we had black and white television.
Black and white. That's right.
Yeah, we've lived through that, and we've lived through a period of time when we were 16 years old and it was raining and on a Tuesday afternoon and we were at home in the holidays. There was no TV being broadcast. There was no such thing as a video recorder. There were no video games, and the only thing to do was play a fucking record.
That's right. So and we had records,
and we had records, and they would actually work. And, you know, and we've lived through all that. We've lived half our lives without the internet, and half of our lives with it. We saw people land on the moon for the first time. We're quite an experienced generation of the amount of stuff that we've taken on. And when it came down to it, we were the first bloody people on the internet.
Yeah, that's right. You're 100% right.
You know, and yet, with all that change that's seen us gone from steam engines to AI in our lifetimes, and we're not even old.
Yeah, that's right.
But the government hasn't changed the way it elects itself in 200 years, you know?
It doesn't make sense.
It
doesn't make sense. Boy, even in England, you know, the way they argue back and forth, stand up. How old is that?
That just goes on forever. I mean,
I know. You know,
they've got these guys wearing sort of like, you know, swords and things. And what the hell's a guy with a sword going to do?
I have one critique about the guards in England, the Queen's Guards or whatever. That's kind of, in my opinion, that's kind of silly, you know, in today's modern age, don't you think? The way they march and get out of my way and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's all very pompous. It does great business for the tourists.
Is that what it is?
You know what I mean? Yeah, I mean, like, you know, the Americans and the Japanese love watching all that stuff go on. So there's big queues of people to watch the guards march up and down. Mind you, I tell you what, they are all actual. You know, you wouldn't want to mess with one.
People try to mess with
way. They're not just actors wearing silly hats. They are fully trained members of the British military and would be on the front line.
I think I'd respect them more if they were in their military uniform, you know.
Well, but it would look a bit Banana Republic-ish then, wouldn't it? I don't know. I mean, we're sort of like going up and down in military combat fatigue. No, it wouldn't be. That wouldn't be very British. No, I can't have that. No.
There are just so many funny YouTube videos of people messing with them, touching their horse, and you know, doing all kinds of
They usually don't do too well out of doing that. Yeah, they usually get what they deserve. Those guys are not. You know, they're not sissies.
They don't have patience, that's for sure.
Back to the album. Me. You know, I wouldn't do anything to you, but like,
no.
I wouldn't be there to start with. So there you go.
Yeah. Back to the album. You have a video out called The Single. which is
Oh,
new.
right. Yes, yes, that's something I'm particularly happy with. It was
I
a lot
love it.
of fun to do. Yeah.
Yeah. It reminded me a little bit of the Flower Kings, you know?
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I,
Well, I
I
mean,
had the Flower Kings on. They're great guys.
Flower Kings are a big influence on me anyway.
Love those guys. Yeah.
Always have been. I've always liked their music, and
This is actually a re-recorded version of a track you wrote 25 years ago. Is that right?
yeah, it's many ways. It's a sort of song that that started the tangents. I wrote it for a previous band I was in, which was called Parallel at 90
Right.
Degrees, and that band. I wrote this song and I decided to put it on an album called The Time Capsule with the rest of the PO90 material because I liked it, but I kind of thought it's not quite right for the band. It'd be right for if I was a progressive rock band. And then, of course, it sort of became a blueprint. You know, I kind of thought, yeah, maybe I could actually form a band that did music like this. And The Tangent was that band. And of course, it took off and became a lot more successful than PO90 had ever been. So, in many ways, that song, the single, was actually the first Tangent track, but recorded 5 years before the Tangent existed, as it were. So yeah, it was quite interesting.
It's a great track. I really enjoy it. Really like that song.
Yeah, I like the song. It's it's good. It's up. It's rocking. You know. So yeah.
Another song that's would be great for radio play, and you did edit it for radio, was The North Sky. I could hear that, you know, as a top 40 DJ, I could have heard that on, you know, on top 40 radio. If top 40 was any good anymore, like it used to be.
Well, I mean, I can tell you that was something that was quite interesting. I discovered how difficult it was to edit 8 minutes out of it.
Oh.
You know, I'm really glad it wasn't a case of the record company say, oh yeah, we need the song editing down 8 minutes and get rid of 8 minutes of it and just have the 3. I'm really glad I could keep both versions on the album. Of course, that's the important thing. So yeah, so it didn't hurt too much to do it because I knew I was keeping it anyway. So it was quite an adventure to say, well, to strip it down, say, okay, what is the nuts and bolts of this song? Let's make just that 3 minutes of the nuts and bolts of it. And it worked. It did. And I think that if you're going to work out how that happened, it's because I used the things I've learned from so long ago.
Right.
That even if you take my most complex pieces, they are all written around a kernel that I learned from listening to Tamla Motown records when I was a kid. You know,
it's amazing.
Like, you know, how do you make Tears of a Clown? You know, that's utter genius. And
yeah,
you know, I've followed pieces like that and how those are constructed, and then of course I expand them into being the big pieces that I end up writing. You know, because I really like writing long pieces.
How would you like to do an R&B album and maybe bring a guest aboard, maybe like Stevie Wonder?
What do you mean by R&B? This is a phrase that's changed a lot in the UK.
I know you got R&B, you got soul, you know, R&B, you know, Stevie Wonder music, Gladys Knight, Marvin Gaye.
Oh God,
Four Tops, those guys.
I mean, I'd like to do it both ways. I mean, like R&B in the UK,
different.
If you'd asked in the 1960s, name an R&B band, everybody would have said The Who.
Yeah, that's very different.
And we'd have once called Dr. Feelgood.
Good band.
That sort of thing. Well, have I got false eyebrows on that have been? I think I have. Look, there's something that Zoom's doing that's giving me these weird.
Is that right? I don't see it. I don't see it. Do you normally have eyebrows?
I haven't got eyebrows. Like, what does Zoom think it's doing? I've got these extra stupid eyebrows. God, sorry. Yeah, just to forget the eyebrows. These are not my eyebrows.
Okay, I don't see anything different there, but I don't know.
My eyebrows aren't those.
Okay, no, all right. Makes you look like John Lennon. Look like John.
Artificial intelligence has said, "Oh, this guy needs some eyebrows. Let's put them on it." What the hell?
Andy's taking over, man. Taking over.
Sorry, you were asking me something that was probably a lot more sensible than me clicking on my eyebrows. What was that?
No, we were talking about R&B music.
Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah,
that form of R&B,
yeah,
you're talking about, yeah, sort
right.
of I'd love to do something. Any of those greats. I mean, that's it. I mean, I did a piece on the album that we did in 2018, Auto Reconnaissance. What was it? 2012. I can't remember when they were all made, actually, to be honest. There was a piece on there which was called The Midas Touch, and I wanted that. I was very sort of like thinking in terms of Marvin Gaye around the
Yeah,
time of What's Going On, that kind of
right.
stuff. I wanted it to have that kind of feel. I really do like those guys. Stevie Wonder's an absolute
Hmm.
major inspiration, so important guy. Stevie
Yeah,
Wonder, I mean, like we all think of the great synthesizer pioneers as people like Keith Emerson, Rick Wakeman, and Klaus
exactly.
Schulze from Tangerine Dream. But Stevie Wonder was there with modular synthesizers day one, the bass lines in songs like Too High and using synth bass before anybody else was trying that. And of course, he was using a big modular synthesizer called the Tonto,
Hmm.
uh, who made these sort of weird albums like Tonto's Expanding Headband and stuff like that, which was a kind of very American version of Tangerine Dream, really.
Right.
And Stevie Wonder was hiring the guys to help him put albums together at the time. He was a great innovator, and and I've often thought, that the guys making R&B at the time, people like the Commodores, people like
Hmm.
Earth, Wind and Fire, Stevie Wonder, and everything, they were like Prog's distant cousin,
Yeah, I agree.
because they were doing the big stage shows. They had the fantasy artwork with
Yep.
all the pyramids. They were using big synthesizers, fantastic musicians. They were just they were just doing the same thing as we were,
Yeah.
but whatever reason it remains separate, and it's I try to bring more of that into our music because
Hmm.
I think it belongs there, really. We had a big hit from the UK. um, Rod Temperton wrote it, and Rod Temperton also wrote songs for Thriller, by Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
But he had this band over here which was called Heatwave, and they had a song called
Yeah.
Boogie Nights, right?
Yeah.
When you put the beginning of it on, just listen to the way it begins. And they've got this walking bass line and a kind of
Hmm.
like bit of guitar chopping over the top of it. And for 30 seconds, you could be listening to Yes there.
True.
Sounds just like something that Peter Banks would have done, playing the guitar for Yes on the first album, and you think, wow, we are a lot closer to that music than we necessarily think. Yeah.
Well, we've all influenced each other, of course, the black music back in the early days was the original rock and roll, you know.
Yeah.
We got our music from there. The Brits brought the blues back with John Mayall and Fleetwood Mac, and brought them back from the Muddy
And Zepp,
Waters
of course.
days.
Yeah.
You guys, the Brits, were very instrumental in prog music, and I give the Brits number one kudos for that. If it wasn't for the Brits and Prog, we
Mhm.
wouldn't have Prog if it wasn't for the Brits, you know.
Yeah, it
So
was. Yeah, quite clearly, it was a very important thing. I don't think it wouldn't have turned out quite the same if it hadn't been for the Grateful Dead, for example. I think the Jefferson Airplane, and people like
right.
that, they certainly contributed to it. And I don't know, there's some even more obscure bands, like there's an amazing band that nobody from
Hmm.
America ever seems to have heard of, but they're called the United States of America.
Yeah,
What a
excellent
band
band.
that
Yeah.
was. Whoa. My goodness me, they were ahead of their time. That was prog rock before prog rock, that was. So, America had a big say in it. The Brits had a big say in it. And the
Yeah.
Italians were the other guys who really sort of like, like the Italians. I've always pictured the Italians sort of like going, rock and roll, we do opera here.
Yeah.
And there's all this rock and roll going on, and go round the clock tonight, and the Italians will be going, "What's this shit?" You know, and they've got these great pianists and fantastic singers and operas and classical composers and everything like that. And so they totally ignored it. You know, they just totally ignored rock and roll, really. And then suddenly prog came along, and so the Italians went, "Ah, that's us."
Yeah,
This is our bag, right? We're going to do this, and we're going to do it better than everybody else. And of course, they just were absolutely amazing at it, the way they did it. And to go back to an earlier sort of like thread is that I really like the way the Italians kind of punked it. They did it all themselves. You know, they did little untidy backstreet studios and whereas sort of like Yes and Genesis were sort of like touring the world in comfort and luxury and working in the finest studios that were on offer, the Italians were working in little grubby holes and making amazing progressive rock music. So I really like their stuff too.
Yeah. I guess if you put some guitar tracks on some Bach or Beethoven, you'd have prog rock.
Well, yeah, I think they did that in Bill and Ted, didn't they? Really? There's a very good scene with Beethoven playing synthesizers in Bill and Ted. So yeah,
that's ELP.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
I tell you, Andy, I love the album, man. I really think you're brilliant. I really mean that. The way you put this album together, I still don't understand how you did it. I really don't. I'd love to. How long did it take you to put it all together?
It took a long time, long time, and a lot of that was to do with the bass, because I had to really work at that.
Really?
But yeah, it was a difficult one. It was new to me, and I had to work out how to play the thing and how to incorporate. I knew the only way, the reason why I managed to do it is that I'm enough of a composer to know what I wanted it to do.
Right.
I knew what I wanted the bass to do, and I wanted the bass to do things that I wasn't capable of doing it with it yet. So I'd sit here for ages just replaying and playing and playing until I got it right, you know. So that I had a lot of time. The time was there. It was available to me. I was able to just sort of put myself fully into that aspect of it. And so yeah, a lot of time got used, but it was time well spent, I think. And I very much enjoyed it. And yeah, but at the same time, I'm really looking forward to getting back together again with the real people. Yeah.
When is that going to happen?
Well, we're already doing it.
Are you really? You guys are back together?
I mean, we have these things in the music industry these days called lead times. It's basically because I'm with Inside Out, and Inside Out is now part of Sony. And when you're dealing with Sony, they need to know that a product is there before they start all their kind of like logistics, how it will be transported, manufactured, put into shops, scheduled. And they want the album in the can so that they know it's done before they start all that. And that's 6 months. So I finished this album in November. It's done. Finished.
It's coming out now.
Yeah. Submitted. And I've just waited all this time. Well, you don't think I'm just going to wait?
Yeah.
I've written a new album which will, you know, get made and finished off in the course of the next year, and then there'll be another 6 month period on top of that where we have to wait for that one to come out.
Right.
You know, it's something. I've been very, very, very lucky. And I don't know what's caused it or anything. I've got several explanations for it, but I'm a kind of guy who's written the best stuff I ever wrote in later life. You know, we spend a lot of time looking back at heroes and what they did when they were 20 years old, 21, 25, you know, and thinking, and quite a lot of their stuff is the best stuff they ever did is during that time. But I think that the reason maybe for that, without wanting to diss anybody or criticize anybody, there's always this point when a band is trying to break through, when it's trying to make itself felt. And that period is usually the best period. What they do, they're fighting for that recognition. Everything they do has to be the best they can possibly do to be the one that breaks them and brings them to the public's attention. And so, you know, when we're looking at a band like Yes, for example, that incredible period that took them from their first album to, say, the end of Relayer, that incredible progression of what they did in that time. I mean, you know, they were so avant-garde, it's not believable. I mean, we think of Yes as not being part of the avant-garde. We think of people like Van der Graaf and Henry Cow as being more avant-garde, but I actually think Yes were even more out there than those guys. I think they were just right out there. It's just that they made music that was so listenable at the same time. You know?
Exactly.
And that, and of course, like, you know, as time goes on, you find that bands like Yes and sadly like Genesis, you know, year by year you find it becoming not quite as good. And I think that what's happened is that once they've achieved the success, that sort of like goal of it's gone. And I once said, I was talking about Abacab, I think. I think all that Genesis had to do was turn up in the studio, fart, and they knew they were going to sell a million records. And when you know that you don't have to do anything, all you have to do is come up with a riff. Hey, this is a good riff.
Exactly.
When you do it, Abacab, you know, that'll do. Just stick that down. It'll probably be a hit. We'll sell millions of records and be able to buy another forest in Scotland, you know. So, and I can understand that because, you know, but the difference is with me is that it never happened. I'm still working. I'm still waking. I'm still working for the one.
Yeah.
The one that sort of like helps me, you know, buy a sofa for this room. You know, it would be really nice. But as a result of that sort of hunger to get a record that a lot of people like, will keep driving me into writing as good a music as I can possibly do. And every note matters to me, whereas to an artist who's been going a long time and is already a multimillionaire, well, it might not mean quite as much.
Here's my take on you. I don't think you want to sell out. Number one, you're too proud for that. You know, you like to write good music. You know, it's very important to you. You're not going to sell out just to put, you know, something that sounds like Taylor Swift out there just to make a lot of money. Is that right?
Well, I mean, like I actually really rate Taylor Swift from what I've heard. I think she's really, really good at what she does. But like, I mean, I wouldn't. That's not the road I want to go down. I mean, that is the perfectly right road for a very attractive and very talented young lady to go down. She's done exactly the right thing. But, you know, the tangent started, and the tangent was a guy who was in his 40s, probably one of the most uninteresting ages that there is to be. You know, I mean, just this bloke in his 40s, not particularly good looking or anything like that. I was just a guy, you know, and I just start making this music. And
yeah, but
so
see, you guys,
it's about the music. It's not about the personality within the music.
The tangent will go down in the same category of Yes and Genesis and numbers like in Palmer. You know, when you think of the tangent, you're going to think of that. You're going to think of those bands. You know what I mean?
I would hope that those are the bands that people would use us as a benchmark.
I think so.
Against use as a benchmark for us to be measured against.
Yeah,
those are.
But times have changed. Times have changed. Those kinds of bands are not where it's happening anymore, like it used to be. Like back when we were in the 70s. You know that they were huge. They were selling out stadiums. You know.
But I think that, you know, there's still a huge amount of fantastic new music out there.
Oh, of course,
But it's
especially prog
always,
music. I
I think it's,
agree.
you
Yeah,
have to look for it. You have to look for it, and
100%.
you have
Yep.
to find it. I mean, there's a band called Dirty Loops out there
Right.
who I absolutely adore.
Mm-hmm.
Although their latest single leaves me a little bit. But they are essentially a pop group who
Right.
sound remarkably from time to time like Michael Jackson revisited. But as well as that, they're into prog.
Yeah, that's
And
cool.
you can feel that within the music. You know,
Yeah.
you've got these sort of Michael Jackson songs with style songs with major progressive rock leaps in them, and they're
Very
amazing.
cool.
A
Very
band
cool.
called Thank You Scientist who did a similar kind of idea to that as well. They're really good. There's a band called Noah who are just amazing musicians, are hardly known, and of course you've had bands who've made it. You know, made it through their just constantly working on the internet. I've forgotten the name of the group, but Cory Wong's part of it.
Mhm.
The they made it to Madison Square Garden, for goodness sake, you know, and
Yeah.
uh, just by releasing tracks on the internet. So that's, you know, they are there, but you have to discover them. You have to want to find them.
I know.
And if you don't want to just hear Taylor Swift all the time, and I understand why people wouldn't, they so you know, our lives are so much shaped by what stage we're at. I mean, there is a reason why I think the Spice Girls are brilliant. Yeah.
They were brilliant. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
They were the closest thing at the time to the Beatles.
Yeah,
And you know,
they were astonishing. They were
astonishing.
absolutely
Yes.
brilliant, and the songwriting and everything they did was perfect.
Yes,
But
I
there's a
agree.
reason. There's a reason why I didn't go. Oh, this is all rubbish. It's not like it used to be. It's not as good as
Right.
the Beatles. It's not as good as and the reason is my daughter loved them.
I know.
How could I not? You know, they were part of the soundtrack of my life. I had a
Yes.
daughter who just did nothing but play the Spice Girls all the time.
Yeah, me
And I
too.
love that music because every time I hear that music, I think of my wonderful
I
daughter.
know.
She
I
was
know.
growing up and all the things that she did and
Yeah.
all the great times that she had. Uh, and and so, you know, I think it very much depends where you are in your
Right.
life as to how you react to the music that's
That's
going on.
true.
You know, we all, you know, so maybe if I had a daughter now, I've got granddaughter now, you see, of course, and she might really like Taylor Swift, and
Yeah.
so that it might become part of the
Right. That is
vocabulary
true.
of my life because she likes
Yeah.
that, you know. So
Yep. That is true. As a music journalist though, I do get, you know, a little crazy with Taylor Swift music. I'm not a big fan of hers. But you are right. If my grandkids, and I do have a grandkid that does like her, you
right,
know,
yeah.
so
Well, see, like if there is a time, you know, my oldest granddaughter may one day, and it could be next weekend, she might say, "Will you teach me how to play such and such a song by Taylor Swift on
right.
our piano?" And I
And,
will.
and you'll do it.
And that will probably be, you know, when that happens, it'll be a lovely experience between a grandfather
Yeah,
and his granddaughter, teaching her to
I
play a
know.
song
That's
on the
true. I
piano.
agree.
And that will be a memory that I will
Yeah,
carry to my grave, you know, if that happens. It hasn't happened
I
yet, but
know.
it might, you
But you
know.
know what it is? We grew up with Carly Simon and Carole King, and you
Oh,
know
great stuff.
those, and then you see Taylor Swift selling out stadiums. I
Mhm.
didn't see Carole King sell out stadiums, you know, and she was 1,000 times better than Taylor Swift, you know.
Well, of course, I mean, you know, naturally, I will always have a place in my heart for people like Carole King.
Yeah,
And, you know, that that classic album from 1971, you know, I just, what was that called now? The Great Album. It was the huge album that we had. I feel the earth move under my feet every time you've been around, and you're so far away. And
so
all those,
far away.
that
Yeah,
song just melts my
yeah,
heart when
me
I hear
too.
it, man. You know, and she, yeah, I suppose that I remember playing. I remember I did some teaching not so long ago at a college, and the class was on, and I thought I'd put some music on that they might enjoy in the background, and one of the songs that I had on there was quite an old song. It was by S Club 7, which was "Don't Stop, Never Give Up, Hold Your High and Reach the Top," which to me was always a rip off the Jacksons. You know, I always thought that just sounds like 1, 2, 3, A, B, C. I thought, well, it's the same song basically, just redone later.
Right.
And when it was on, a girl burst into tears in the class, and I said, "What's up?" And she said, "Oh, this song, it just takes me back. It's so beautiful. It's the soundtrack of my childhood."
Exactly.
And I thought, wow, that's the kind of thing I would think about Carole King's "So Far Away," and so these things just appear. We get older and our music tastes don't change quite as fast as the young people's stuff. So,
That other big song that you were probably thinking about, "It's Too Late." That was my favorite. "It's Too Late" by Carole King.
It's too late, baby. It's too late.
Oh man, what a groove on that.
Tapestry. That's the album. Tapestry.
Tapestry. That's right.
What a fantastic record. And of course, I read a really interesting book, which is about 1971 and music. And that's a watershed year that 1971 was. 1971 was, according to the author of the book, was the year that the concept of the album became famous. Because up until that point, the Beatles had done this thing where trying to make an album rather than just a collection of singles, but all the same, they hadn't actually achieved what they wanted to do because the record company was still just letting them release compilations of the records they'd made. But Tapestry was one of the first to actually be a celebrated album that you listen to all the way through, was made as one thing at the same time. That was a really big record, wasn't it?
It was big.
And it was sort of like a precursor to Dark Side of the Moon, Rumors, and all those sort of like, colossal selling albums of the 1970s. Tapestry was kind of the prototype, as it were.
Those were the days.
Yes, they were. They were indeed. They were very good days. And and if it wasn't for Donald Trump, Netanyahu, and the Hamas people and Putin, it would be the days now. It'd be really great without those twats, to be honest.
I don't know what happened to music, though. You got to admit, we had everything in the 60s. I mean, R&B, Motown, the way they dressed, the way they carried themselves, they were beautiful. I mean, it was incredible bands back in the 60s. And the top 40 radio, you had Frank Sinatra, you had the Beatles, you had the Supremes, all on one station, and we went from that to this, What happened to radio? I was a big radio guy.
I think that, one of the things that separates people from the USA from people from the UK is that we don't realize it necessarily, but we had completely different experiences with radio.
Yes, true.
And in America, if I'd been alive in, say, California when I was 14 years old, which is when I was getting into music big time, that would have been 1973, And in 1973, if I'd come to America and I'd tuned in my radio dial, I'd have been able to find a station that was playing Tamla Motown, probably an AM station back in those days.
Yeah.
And I might have found an FM station that was playing Jackson Browne, Little Feat, Carole King, and sort of like, the sort of like the FM sound. Steely Dan would have been there.
Right.
FM, no static at all,
that. Yeah.
I'd have found that. Now, in England, that situation with the different choice of radio stations did not exist.
Yeah.
We had Radio 1 and that was it. We
That
had
was
the
it.
pirate stations just offshore.
Yep.
We had Radio 1 by 1968, and Radio 1 was all powerful for pop music. Now, essentially, they had some quite innovative. It could have been a lot worse than it was, because if, for example, we'd been set up with a very, very conservative sort of style leadership, they might not have decided to play all the black music from America that they did,
Right.
but they did play all that. So we were hearing the Temptations, we were hearing Gladys Knight and the Pips, we were hearing Diana Ross, the Supremes. We were getting to hear all that really cool stuff, and of course that moved on into the Stylistics and into the Commodores, Earth, Wind and Fire. That was all really big over here. And we were also hearing the British groups who were totally unknown in the USA. People like Mud, Shawaddy Waddy, these were Sailor, and these bands who never were, they were just local to us. They were our local English bands. There was a lot of that going on. Gary Glitter, Slade.
Yeah.
You've probably heard of T-Rex, but that was but there was nowhere where they were playing Jackson Browne.
Right.
So that was all there. What you could hear that kind of thing, because Radio 1 used to switch off at 6 o'clock in the evening and hand over to Radio 2, which was more kind of like, light music, sometimes classical, sometimes, Frank Sinatra. And then Radio 1 came back for 2 hours at 10 o'clock. And that,
excuse me,
if you listen between 10 o'clock and midnight, you might have heard some Jackson Browne, you might have heard some Steely Dan, but not during the day. So
that's interesting.
Completely different experience between America and the UK for radio.
I had the same conversation with, God bless him, Kim Simmons from Savoy Brown. We talked about how he had a hard time growing up finding American music, and I think through relatives, he was handed down some albums and he learned about American music, but it was hard. It was hard to find back then because he was a lot older than us, to find it on the BBC anyway, to find good music, American music.
Right. Yes, it was. It was difficult. We did have people who specialized in it. There was a guy called Bob Harris who'd make sure we.
Right. I know Bob Harris. I remember him.
Yeah, he made sure we got to hear some American music. John Peel used to play a bit. He was very keen on things like Neil Young, Crazy Horse, and all the Neil Young solo stuff. He'd play a lot of Little Feat. He really liked those a lot. And then, of course, he switched to punk very, very, very suddenly in the late 1970s, kind of realizing somebody needs to take on and look after this. Otherwise, it's not going to get any airplay at all on the BBC. So he did. Whilst that meant that we lost a lot of the Jackson Browne kind of stuff, we did get this sort of like sudden explosion of punk rock, which was very important to me at the time, because I was exactly the right age for punk rock, and I took it on big time. I loved it,
Yeah,
I stopped liking prog.
I liked remember Ian Dury and the Blockheads. I followed him, and
they were just they were just a jazz fusion.
I know
band.
they were kind of cool though.
We're a jazz fusion band. What are we going to do now? Well, okay, we'll go a bit punky, but we'll keep jazz fusion. They were. So they got away with it. I'm talking about the real stuff, the Damned, the Clash, the Sex Pistols. I really love that stuff, man. I saw the Sex Pistols live.
Did you really?
I saw them within the same year that I saw Yes play the Going for the One tour. So that's pretty good to have caught those two bands at the time and the totally different experience of being at both those shows. Because they were actually doing the spitting stuff back then, people actually spat at gigs, you came out covered with spit, you thought, what kind of pleasure is this, you thought when you were going in, and when you came out you thought, that was really good. What a great show. I think they played for 20 minutes. That was it.
all bar chords, right?
Yeah. It was just an absolute mega thrash, but they were really tight.
Yeah.
Oh, they were a way better band than they're given credit for. They were phenomenal.
I played around in a punk band when I was in radio. I was going through radio school, a CBS school in Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah.
And we started a punk band, and my friend Jerry was a brilliant lyricist. Oh, he was so good. And we started a band and we called it The Drugs.
The Drugs. Yeah.
The Drugs. D-R-U-G.
Oh, the Drugs. Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
But we just had fun with it.
I mean, for me, it was, I was leaving school. It was 1977 when I left, which of course is the year of the punk.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I was right there with you.
And of course, I wanted to be in a band. I'd wanted to be in a band since I discovered Yes when I was 12.
Yeah.
Right. But I got banned from playing piano at school because I'd been caught playing Hawkwind on the piano. I was playing Silver Machine.
That's funny.
And I got told off for not playing classical music, and I was banned from the piano. So I left school without very much talent. I wasn't a great keyboards player anyway. I'd only reached grade 5 of my exams, and there's 8, So I wasn't sort of like,
That's a great story. That's got to be in your book.
The thing is that when you were, if you wanted to join the kind of band I wanted to be in, I'd have needed an LRAM in music. I'd need to have sort of been to college and learnt it all and all the modes and be able to perform like Rick Wakeman. I was nowhere near Rick Wakeman's standard, and still aren't. But I was nowhere there. But I could listen to Dave Greenfield from the Stranglers, and the guy out of Blondie, and think, I could do that. I couldn't do what Rick Wakeman does, but I could do that. So it made sense for me to look at the punk bands, or the new wave bands, as it was by the time I was actually really looking. And so the new wave bands were where I went in, new wave and punk. And I had a place on the stage for me, and I could play, and I started to learn how to do it and get better at it. And so that in many ways, they were kind of like my introduction to playing with bands and working out what to do, and then gradually, slowly but surely, trying more interesting things on the keyboard and moving ever so slowly towards doing prog in the 1990s. It took me a length of time, really.
It was also a brilliant band back in that time. The Cars, they were a great band. They really were.
What was that? I guess you're just what I needed.
Yeah. Moving in Stereo is my favorite song.
Yeah, so they were quite. I was quite into a band called the DBs, who everybody seems to have forgotten about.
I heard of the DBs.
Yeah, they did a great song called "Cycles Per Second," which I absolutely loved, and then they did another one called "Big Brown Eyes," and I thought they're going to be huge. In fact, their record was produced by Todd Rundgren, which I thought that's going to make them even more huge.
Exactly.
Then it never happened. What a shame. They were great. And they were from the USA.
Did you like XTC?
I loved XTC. I still love XTC. They're one of my favorite bands of all time. They are the greatest overlooked band.
Yeah, for sure.
They are of the same. Britain totally has been on the look for the new sound of rock Britain, and they just totally ignored XTC, who were the best band we've had since the Beatles. They were our second Beatles, and we ignored them and just let them pass us by. It's one of the greatest travesties in the history of rock and roll.
How about their spin-off, the Dukes of Stratosphere?
That was phenomenal.
I loved them, man. Phenomenal. I bought every album.
We've constantly lusted for years to have another Beatles.
There you go.
And we had them. We had them. They were there. They kept on releasing records. They were always
perfect.
brilliant. And we
They
were
were
just
so cool.
And just everybody ignored them because
Todd Rundgren was instrumental with the XCC as well. I think he produced some of their albums.
Yeah.
Great
yes,
band.
they worked with. They didn't like working with Todd, actually.
Yeah, I think I heard that.
Yeah, they didn't like it.
Yeah,
but I mean, like I expect he's a bit of a dictator when it comes to it because he's got so much experience. I mean,
he's a nice guy though. I've had him on the show a bunch of times, and he's a good guy though.
Yeah, he's a very clever bloke.
Yeah, he is.
Like his version. I mean, when he did that, years and years and years ago, he did that amazing version of "Good Vibrations" by the Beach Boys. How the hell did he do that? It's amazing,
Here's a guy I just had on the show recently.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody from the past that not too many people talk about anymore. Terry Reid.
Terry Reid.
Remember Terry Reid?
I'm afraid I don't. So.
Oh, really? Huge. He was huge back in the 60s and 70s.
No, I don't. Is this a solo artist or a member of a band?
Solo. Basically solo. He's the guy who introduced Robert Plant and John Bonham.
Right, okay.
To Jimmy Page. He was invited to be the lead singer of Led Zeppelin. He turned it down. He was invited to be the lead singer of Deep Purple, and he turned it down.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So this is it's obviously a story from the US because I've never heard this one at all. I mean, I even saw the Band of Joy play once.
Yeah, really? Wow.
Yeah, I did indeed.
I'm surprised. That's a long time ago.
I have seen the Band of Joy.
You must have been very young.
I was not. They actually got back together.
They did.
Very, very brief period of time. And they played as the support band to somebody I went to see, and I think it was Mott the Hoople.
Really?
I went to see Mott the Hoople, and the Band of Joy were supporting them. And I kind of thought, the Band of Joy, this is the band that Led Zeppelin was.
Oh, wow. How about that?
And so I actually saw the Band of Joy, and
that's cool.
Well, wow, that is quite an amazing thing, really. Now, all these years later, and of course, that will have been around the same time as I saw the Sex Pistols. So that reunion of the Band of Joy must have taken place in round about 77, 78 when I was at university, because I only stayed a year. I dropped out to become a rock and roller. So
very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. How about touring?
Can you imagine what my vicar dad thought of that? Man.
Yeah, because you came from a musical family, right?
Yeah, I came from a musical. Well, my mother was very musical,
right?
So she was a school teacher and a vicar's wife.
Yeah,
me dropping out of uni to become a rock and roller was not greeted with the greatest of enthusiasm, shall we say? Yeah.
My daughter and my son-in-law and my sister-in-law, they're all teachers. We have a lot of teachers in our family.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's my son's head of mathematics at a large school in Leeds, and
cool.
My daughter she's a podiatrist, which is a foot doctor. So that's it.
You should be very proud of them.
Oh, I am.
Very cool. How many do you have grandkids?
Yeah, I mentioned before. I've got 3 grandkids.
Right.
2 of my sons. That's Eddie and Keris. They're about 10 and 9-ish. I can never remember how old my grandchildren are. It's not my job to remember that sort of thing. But I've got a very, very young granddaughter who was only born a year and a bit ago, and she's called Elena. That's my daughter and her partner's baby, and she's a bit of a miracle, actually. I can't go into it too much, but like she's a complete miracle that we ever got her, and she's a bit of an apple of my eye at the moment, really.
They're wonderful, aren't they? Grandkids are the best.
Yeah, it's one of the best things. One of the best things that can ever happen.
Yes, I agree. I have 5, and we have 2 girls that are identical twins.
Yeah.
That was interesting growing up when they were little to tell the difference between the two.
Yeah. Yes, it is. That would have been very frustrating. I don't know how I'd manage that. 2 birthdays that wasn't, got to buy 2 presents, 2 cars. Oh dear.
Andy, what about touring? What about the Tangent touring? Are you gonna?
Well, yes, I'm sure we will at some point.
Okay.
I think that people have gradually begun to realize that, touring isn't our thing.
Right.
We like doing it. We do like doing it, but we're one of these bands who sort of like, there are some bands who have a huge live following,
Yeah.
Like quite a lot of the jam bands, for example. They'll sell out venues and sell no records.
True.
And we're kind of like, our future, everything we do is geared around making records.
Mm-hmm.
And if we get the opportunity to put a tour on, we'll do it. But we've probably only done 5 tours in our entire existence, and they haven't been long ones either.
Yeah.
We've come over and played the US twice in 22 years. We've played Canada once. We've been to Europe a fair few times, but not that many. And I guess it's part of the fact that the Tangent is composed of 5 people, all of whom are leaders of another band. So that's it. Leads Machine, Jonas leads Car Mechanic. Theo leads he's a band called Double Talk, and Steve is a free agent who plays in all sorts of bands all over Wales. So we're busy guys, but we come together for the Tangent because that's our music.
Yeah,
that's what we do. Sometimes we're playing out for other people, be it Sam Fox or Steve Hackett, but when it's the Tangent, it's ours. It belongs to us, and so that's important.
It's your Steely Dan when you get together. Yeah. Here's your final question, and I've asked you this before. You may remember. Okay. If you had a Field of Dreams wish, like the movie, to perform, collaborate with anyone from the past or present, who would that be?
I think it's probably the same answer. It's going to be Peter Hamill, Neil Morse. I think it's the same.
I'm surprised you haven't played with Neil Morse yet. He plays with everybody.
He's never played with me.
He should. I've had Neil on.
I really like the guy. I mean, he's a fantastic songwriter, an amazing musician.
You should get together with him for sure.
But the reason why I really would like to play with him is that he is such a religious man, and I am not. I'm an atheist. So I have no God or any religion that I answer to in my life, and
that makes you want to play with them.
Yes, because I think that because if somebody who is a believer in God and somebody who isn't were to work together to try and find the common ground between them,
that's interesting.
That would be a really, really, really good thing to do. Because I mean, there's so much friction in the world between people who do believe in God and who don't, who are members of one religion and not another.
Right.
But surely Neil Morse and myself would be able to find something positive to say to this world about our experiences and how people can better live together despite their differences. I think it would be a fantastic thing to happen. And of course, Peter Hamill is just my hero since being 12 years old. I am now looking at being a fan of Peter Hamill for 52 years, and although I've done covers of his music and I've met him a number of times and he knows who I am and I know who he is, of course.
Yeah.
We've never worked together. I've asked him and he's politely and thankfully turned me down, but and respectfully, but I've kind of wished that could have happened before one of us pops off. and it looks increasingly like it won't happen. But yeah, he's a guy I've always wanted to work with. You know, you can't have all your dreams, can you? I mean, I've done an awful lot of things that I thought I'd never do. Uh, it's like out of the French Connection. I've actually, because of being in the band, I was able to smoke dope underneath the E railway in Chicago. You know, and I kind of thought, you know, where's he going to come from? Where's Gene Hackman going to appear? You know, there I am. I'm under the E railway in Chicago doing this with some girls. You know, wow, this is amazing. And you know, and I've played on some great stages, and I've met some amazing people. I've had a fantastic life.
I'm gonna put my feelers out for Neil. I'm serious.
The last time I asked him. The last time I asked him was a long time ago now, actually.
Right.
I think I asked him in 2007 if he'd be interested.
But see, that concept you were talking about, by being an atheist and him, you know, a Christian, he might like that. I mean, that might be a way to get together, you know.
Well, last time I asked him about this and put it to him, he said he would ask God. So
okay.
So I presume God said, or God said, I'll think about it. I don't know. I've got no intention of making fun of people for their religion at all. As I say, my dad was a minister of religion in a congregational church.
Is that right?
here in England, and
wow.
I have a total respect for him and what he did, and the amazing works he did for people.
Sure.
You know, so I have nothing against that. It's just that unfortunately I was unable to share the belief, as it were. You know, I just looked at the world in my way and thought, no, I can't see how that would work. I'm very pragmatic, I'm afraid.
You know, I love to talk religion with Ian Anderson. He's my hero, Ian Anderson from Tull.
Yeah.
I've had him on several times, and everybody asks him the same questions and this and that. I go totally the opposite. You know, we talk politics, we talk religion, and he's got a copy of the Quran and the Bible on his iPhone. I mean, he knows his stuff. He really studies it all, you know. Yeah.
I can imagine that. I would have always thought he'd be atheist myself, but
no,
he isn't.
He admires. I mean, he's not a fanatic or anything, but he loves the church. You know, he loves the Church of England, I guess, is what, you know.
Yes.
He likes the Church of England, and he admires the architecture of churches and things like that.
I love that. I love all that. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, if I find there's an interesting church when I'm on holiday in Europe, I want to go and, you know.
And I've also talked to
I've been to St. Peter's in Rome. It was absolutely amazing.
Oh my goodness,
so,
beautiful.
You know, it was what a phenomenal place. And you see, I mean, I often wish that I could subscribe. I listen to Neil sing, and there's so much belief in his music; it just drips out of the speakers. You know, this guy
Andy, I'm
believes what he's singing, and I want some of that, man. You know?
I'm going to say one thing to you, and I've said this to atheists. I'm a Catholic. Okay, I'm not hard nosed or anything. There are things I don't believe in the Catholic religion, and you know all that. But when you see, and you should understand, when you see the birth of a child, you got to know that's a miracle. Right?
I certainly did feel it was a miracle when I saw my son and my daughter born. You know, I was there for both of them. And just an amazing experience.
It is.
Did it
just happen?
Did it bring back faith in a supreme being or a deity? It didn't.
Well, what about this?
It just made me
why is the sun at a certain distance from the earth without us burning up? Why are everything aligned just right? There's got to be a reason for all this. We couldn't have just happened from dust, right? There's got to be a supreme being somewhere. right?
Well, to me, if there is a supreme being, it is just what John Anderson would have called the order of the universe. You know,
But who created the order of the universe?
I don't think it ever needed. I don't think it ever needed to be.
No,
The universe is so
right,
utterly enormous, and you know that famous photograph of the pale blue dot
right.
that Sagan had taken
Hmm.
was taken, and the ship that took it hadn't even left our solar system. You know, it was still here, basically. It was still next door, you know. And they turned it round and they took this picture of the planets, and our little pale dot is so infinitesimally small in the background that it only occupies 1/4 of one
I
pixel
know.
on a
I know.
screen.
It's amazing.
And you realize that so much happened there, everything, and it hasn't even left. It hasn't gone
Yeah.
next door to Andromeda yet, and it's just so colossally big that you know it would eventually happen. You know, that there would be a planet that was just the right distance away from the sun to make the water into a liquid state that would encourage the birth, the growth of amino acids and carbon-based life forms and everything. And it's bound to be one of many places where that has happened in such a universally massive system as we have. And to me, it's just the miracle of science, the miracle of evolution. And that, you know, unfortunately, you know, you'd have to be really good, because I had a dad who was really into the God explanation, and I lived with him for many years.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you know, he couldn't convince me otherwise. But the point is that that's why I like working with people who are Christian,
Right.
because
Sure.
finding that common ground is so
Yeah.
important. You know, it is.
Andy, what if we're just a molecule on a giant's thumb? Remember that? Remember that theory?
Just what?
What if we're just a molecule on a giant's thumb? Remember that theory that we're just
Well, I mean,
the whole universe.
I think that to me, I always try to make it look, you know, if you light a match, there's nothing. You have a match in your hand and you have some friction on a box and nothing's happening. And then suddenly you strike that match, and out of that, suddenly there's this huge reaction. I mean,
Right.
just imagine that you got closer and closer and closer and closer to that flame until you were actually in that flame, and you could see all the individual particles of that flame exploding from this original source, and they're all growing further apart from each other, and these molecules of superheated are almost, you've got a model there of how, to my mind, although I've got no scientific background at all, but to me, there is the perfect explanation to an expanding universe.
Well, the Big Bang, right?
And the Big Bang, and how that all happened. And of course, you know, that we always know that this debate will always end up in the same.
Of course.
Question. Who struck the match?
Yeah, who struck the match?
And that will always be the unanswerable question. And some people will say that it's God, and so. To me, it's all about electricity. That's it. Electricity is everything. If you're looking, you're looking for the new Beatles, it's XTC. If you're looking for God, the answer is it's electricity.
Electricity.
It's there all the time. It's everything in your brain is being relayed to you as a matter of naturally occurring electricity in your body. And if you imagine that electricity exists all over the universe, which of course it does, I think to me, you've got the explanation for everything. And if you want to call it God, and that's absolutely fine by me. You know, it's there.
We're just the energy, right? We're energy.
Yeah, basically. We're all energy. That's it. That's a really good.
Yeah,
that's a really good prog idea, isn't it? That we're all just energy.
We're all just energy. That's it. That's a good title for your next album.
Yeah, well, that's it. You know, we'll have
Andy, I want to thank you, man, for being on the show today. It's always a pleasure to have you on.
it's
I
been
think
very kind of
I think you're brilliant, and I don't
that's
know how
so
you
kind
do
of you
it,
to say.
but you
I
do
just
it.
want to apologize to anybody who's been watching the show who's been disturbed by what are evidently false eyebrows, which I did not
I
ask
think
for.
they look good.
That's ridiculous. I've never had eyebrows.
That is so funny.
I look like a Vulcan, and I've got no idea where they came from,
Uh,
and I did not ask for them. So they are
I don't know.
artificial imposed intelligence.
They're kind of John Lennon eyebrows in a way. I want to say very special thanks to Roy Avon of Royal Avenue Media for arranging this interview with Andy today.
Thank you.
Pre-order the new album by The Tangent titled To Follow Polaris, officially released on May 10th. I gave it 5 stars. I think if that's okay with you, I think it's a great album. I really, really enjoyed it. And you can pre-order it now. I guess you can go to thetangent.com or
The
that's probably the best way.
tangent.org, actually. It's .org, but
.org.
that's very kind of you
Tangent.org.
to say so. The tangent.org. We're
Okay.
there. We'll sell you a signed copy.
Oh, good, good, good. And it'll be on Amazon too as well. So, and for more information about Andy, well, www.thetangent.org, Facebook, Twitter, Spotify, YouTube, and I've also listed the whole discography of The Tangent as well. Thank you, Andy, man. It's been a pleasure.
That's a very nice thing. Thank you so much for spending your time, and thank you for being, as so many other people are, the people between us and our audience are incredibly valuable to all of us. So thank you so much for doing the job you do. And I mean that.
Thank you for the great music, man. It's the best.
All right. It's been a real pleasure.
Me too. Cheers.
Good night, my friend. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye.